on the graves, in the cracks of 1,000 leaves, somewhere.
Divine Source, Great Spirit, we
We
come this day answering the call to serve the one mind, to serve the healing that we're all desiring in our hearts. We're here to serve you, our fellows. We're here on an errand of love by your grace. And so it is.
Where the cold and the hot meet, and the powers that be lead.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Yuta, and I'm back with my lovely friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, welcome back. Seems like the Spirit had us on a bit of a journey this morning around what we were meant to be talking about today. And it feels like in the end, it's settled on this idea that the way we find ourselves here, there's always this choice for us to make in any moment about how we're using our energy, how we're using our mind, what is our focus here. And it seems like ultimately there's these fundamental opposites that we can choose from at any given moment. On the one side, we have the spirit, love, expansion, being a gift to the whole mind. And on the other side, we have a self-serving energy. You can call it the ego or the lower mind, the unconscious, whatever terms you're used to using for that is fine. But yeah, it seems like there's always this choice for us to make. And yeah, a little bit of what was coming through as well was, when there is an awareness of how we've been using our minds, and if we've kind of been serving the wrong master for a while, that when there's the awareness that comes in around that we may be asked to go back and make amends or acknowledge something that wasn't quite right in the way we were behaving or thinking or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of places where the spirit can take us with this whole topic. So thanks for joining us, and over to you, Elizabeth. What you got?
So, I was just hearing this is not like a political or a social statement. Yeah, we're here talking about getting our minds into proper alignment with the spirit. And I don't know why that showed up, but there it is. But I guess in part because some of the things that have been messaging the last few hours, but the last couple of days actually. And this word atonement showed up. And about 20 years ago, I went on a cross-country trip with a friend who, at that time, I was dating. And he had some places he wanted to visit. And one of them, the name of the location was a play on the word atone. And the person that started it seemed to have many intentions, but one of them was like atoning for the sins of the people that had taken the land that this person was then stewarding. And they had visions of eco-farming and sustainability, building, and all that kind of stuff. And at that time, my friend was interested in those things. So we wound up going to this place, and it was considered to be sacred land by the peoples, back whenever. And there was a waterway and water right issues and who owned it, and, it's sacred land and all this kind of stuff, which is very much up in the mind now. And I was telling Yuta, I kept seeing a clip of a young man, a little short on YouTube, and it showed up about 4 or 5 days in a row. And the only part that I would hear was, "But I believe in reparations." And, we're looking to, or I'm looking to, receive those reflections of things that are kind of hot buttons out in the world and take them into my mind and to sit with the Spirit with them and to find a way of gaining clarity about how to be in service with these things that seem to be old wounds in the mind. And I was telling Yuta, I watched yesterday a movie I took out of the library called Aloha. I had not seen it before. And in it, there are these messages of a young woman who is very much aligned with the Spirit and the messaging system of the Spirit and honoring of the Spirit. And then there's a gentleman who is more in the satisfying the self and pursuing resources. And so there's that contrast that you spoke of, Yuta, of the worlds that people can choose to be in. And there are a lot of those mythic tales that we're all invited to be working out. And often it looks like we're going to try to work them out on the stage. And there may be symbols of it that are helpful. And there may be choices that get made that can help facilitate healing. But what Yuta and I have been shown over and over again is that healing has to happen within our own minds. So there's a lot in this. We were kind of sitting in the energy of this, and there are just so many layers and levels and angles to it. We kind of sometimes when we get into these talks, we become in the cauldron of these storylines, and it can often be hard to find the line of the story that the Spirit wants us to speak to. So thank goodness we have the prayer to be spoken through, and we know that the Spirit's in charge. So we're just doing our best as little personalities to ride these energies that are big ones. There is massive healing happening in the mind. And my prayer is that I stay in right relation. We're talking about being in right relation, in the one mind, in the world seemingly, but in the one mind. And learning about ourselves and the way our mind is perceiving and believing is crucial to know how to get into alignment with the Spirit.
Yeah, it feels like it's a really deep topic actually. And that mythical sort of feeling is really just all over this for me. And I'm not quite sure how to address it, but a specific thing that is sort of running through my mind is that sometimes, like I said in the intro, sometimes there's these moments where it's almost like we have to fess up or own up or make amends. And it's a little funny because when you come at it from this teaching of atonement, which for me has entered my life only through A Course in Miracles, and in that sort of realm of spirituality, atonement often is equated with something that happens in your mind, and sort of forgiveness also being a thing that you sort of just do in prayer in your mind. And yet I've found on my own journey that sometimes there were places where I actually needed to physically physically in relation with somebody else make reparations. Because there were times where in the past I've operated without awareness of really what was operating, if that makes sense. And so I was in a position of giving guidance and giving directions and being the clear one, so to speak. And later on, I realized that I actually wasn't the clear one and I was in no place to be given any guidance. So there's been times where I've actually reconnected with others that were involved at the time and actually apologized. And there's kind of this feeling sometimes when you apologize for something that it makes you guilty. And it wasn't that for me. For me, it really was actually just a maturing in my mind and saying, look, whatever happened back then, I wasn't clear. And it probably made you confused because I was confused. So let's come back into this moment. And I want to say to you, sorry for what happened back then because I didn't know what I was doing. And in this now moment, there's a miracle, there's a huge store of connection that wasn't there before that can then be accessed. And like there's themes of that in groups like AA too, where people actually have to go back and look at where they haven't been in alignment with themselves, really, and not in alignment with the spirit, and then to see, based on the guidance they were getting then, to yeah, to see if any action was to be taken from there. And there's something humbling in a very, very good way, not in a, you're being put down, but really humbling in a way where things are made equal again. That's what I found in my own experience.
Yeah, I was maybe because of the Aloha movie and some other symbols and messages that have been coming through, I was just being in the meditation of what I believe is the proper communication for this message. If not, forgive me. But the hunas, there has been apparently a long-standing practice in many traditions of community where the so-called lawyers, you might say, of the community, the healers, brought people together maybe once a year to air out their grievances and to mediate the flushing up of the resentments, the old business that was still lingering, still floating around, causing static in the airwaves. So there would be ceremony to bring together the parties. You might, nowadays, people go and spend bazillions of dollars and fight each other in court, right? Well, it would be the communal court, right, where people would come together. I think you stole my chicken. Well, I think you spit on my mother's grave. Well, and they would work it out publicly in front of everybody for the healing of the whole. I was also hearing the word Aini, which in the Peruvian, in the Q'ero tradition, it means you're in relation to everything and everyone, right? You're in your oneness, and you better wake up to it, right? So that you can operate as a contribution rather than as a drag on the system. So in that, again, the hunas, as far as I know, were the ones that would mediate the healing. They were the so-called lawyers in a way, but they were the healers. They were the shamans. They were the peacemakers. We've been talking a lot about that, peacemaking. Many of us seem to be dragging around old stories. Stories of our ancestors, stories of past lives, stories maybe from other planets or galaxies, if you like going there in your mind, that you're some other dimensional being, right? There's a lot of that up in the mind now. Oh, I'm not a human, I'm a galactic. Whatever you think you are. There's stories galore that need healing. And as you said, Yuta, people in certain walks of life where they're pursuing their spiritual life in such a place as an AA meeting, there may be guidance to go make right, to go balance out. You might not have a huna doing that for you, but you might have a sponsor that's helping encourage you to get things in order, in balance. Because if we don't face that little devil on our shoulder, right, that says, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. Forget those people, screw them, right? We start hearing the darkness more than we're hearing the light. We're more available to the part that says, it's all for me, it's all about me, 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 me. That's a place of suffering. And that's a place that if we act from it, we are likely to do harm to not only ourselves, but to our fellows. So it's really like very practical to do these things. I remember when I learned about that idea of like this communal healing regularly, to put everything on the table. Let's air it all out now. I thought, wow, that's brilliant. That's where healing can happen. And I don't want to drag around these stories. And I don't want to see anyone in my life. I don't think of my life as, oh, these are my family or my loved ones or my whatever. I can go to the supermarket and see somebody bent over, hunched over in physical pain and seemingly in mental, emotional pain. And I think, boy, what could I help you let go of today? Because, I feel it. I'm more in the oneness where I feel that experience the person's having. And so I want us all to let go of the stories that we've been carrying around. It's no fun. And when we're in that state of mind, we are really, really unavailable to the spirit to find solutions, to find ways of being a contribution, as you said.
Wow, wouldn't it be a different world if we all had these sort of mediators that can help to air out this stuff? Because yeah, it really is a huge drag on the mind. And yeah, I think that's why it's been nice for me in the past to have, to make these little amends wherever I felt guided to, because partly it was so that I could be really like on a level and equal and present playing field with whoever I was talking to now. But also, I didn't want to drag around this persona that thought I did it all right in the past. Which, in a lot of ways, I've gotten reflections that just, there's a lot of gratitude for me and, lots of appreciation. And I'm sure it's true in one sense. And yet at the same time, I did have to say, like, well, that's good. I'm glad it was helpful, and here's what I was actually going through, and here's actually what happened for me. And it really wasn't all that you could just see on the surface. And there was a lot of hidden things operating that I wasn't aware of. And I'm aware of them now. And it's so nice to not operate under them anymore. So, when we find ourselves on this awakening path, more and more, the more steps we take, our hearts find it increasingly unbearable to keep things in the dark and keep things hidden and keep things out of awareness and keep things dragging around like, oh, I'll deal with that later kind of thing. And more and more there is this desire to really just get it all cleared out in whatever way we feel guided to do that. And I love that. I may not have like a full awareness of it, but somewhere my mind knows that every little thing that I can air out with the spirit or with somebody else, it's actually healing the whole mind, but it's also allowing all these different parts of the whole mind to find the courage to do the same. Because Yeah, I mean, there's a part in the mind that really doesn't like being wrong, and it doesn't like getting things wrong, and it gets embarrassed when somebody seems to find out that you weren't all that you were hyped up to be, or whatever it might be, right? And those are the kind of self concepts we don't want anyway. They're masks, and we really want to be in the strength and the light of the spirit, and it's a very transparent light, so to speak, and we don't want to hold on to anything that's false. So, yeah, just honoring this guidance to make amends, or, just set things straight, I think is a really beautiful thing. And it's also, it's a real call into vulnerability as well. But in the end, following that type of guidance, it leads to so much deeper connections. And that's what I always really enjoy. And I don't like having stuff weigh me down from the past when I talk with people. So whenever it felt right, it felt really good to actually talk about my past and almost like set things straight, sharing actually what was happening versus what somebody else might have perceived at the time. For me, it's always about being able to connect more deeply with someone else now, and whatever it takes to do that. That's what to the best of my ability, what I try to do. And it can be really scary, like if there's family stuff that needs to get sorted out, or if it's work stuff that needs to get sorted out, or marriage things that need to get sorted out. But if anything stays in the shadows for too long, it grows and turns into monsters. And then to deal with it once it's a big monster is can be a little difficult, and definitely ends up causing a little more waves than it may when it just gets caught in the moment. So yeah, for me it's all about the connection. So yeah.
Yeah, and there are times, where we can't get that so-called balance or forgiveness with a person in front of us for whatever reason. Like, there are times where the guidance will be to leave somebody alone and to not have a face-to-face engagement over something. But we still can go to the spirit, and must go to the spirit and work on it energetically, work on it in our minds. I was just seeing, when I was doing the Peruvian shamanism, we did so many fire ceremonies, and so much information would come up when I'm standing there in the fire, and we would use the fire to throw stuff into it, throw our stinky attitude, throw our sadness, throw our heaviness. Well, often I've found I was throwing stuff of my ancestors in for them, you know. So we become gateways, we become channels to do this healing work, this forgiveness work for the one mind. And it sometimes shows up in ways that we don't quite expect, but we can be that placeholder, or be that voice for, or that moment in time and space where we can speak the intention of the heart for a loved one that's passed on, or we can speak it to the ethers for someone that we've tried with and they can't hear us and they don't see themselves, but we still want our side to be clean, and we still want to communicate to them, I love you and I'm sorry. I like the idea of the Ho'oponopono. I'm not sure if I say that properly or not, but that's, like this idea of a prayer being said by those hunas. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for anything I ever did in any time, space, reality structure, right? We're working out stuff here often that is eons old. So I'm sorry for whatever it was. I love you. Thank you. We can say a prayer like that and mean it, and it can change everything. Or we can say a prayer like that and not be sure we mean it, but the Spirit will hear us and they'll come rushing in. There's somebody that wants to know themselves more clearly. There's somebody that wants to be in right relation. Let's show up and help them. Whenever I'm in that state of prayer in myself, of taking responsibility for my own mind, my own light, I feel Spirit rush in every time. So it's a real tool of engagement. It's not just a high idea that we're talking about. No, these are like actual tools and actions that we can engage with to feel that connection, as you said. And it may not be a connection with another body, right? It's connection with the idea of our oneness, with the energy of our unity. That's the only place for me where I know I'm in right relation, is when I'm locked on in my mind and in my heart with the Spirit. We can spend eternity trying to work it out on the stage, or we can take all these stories. My land was taken from me. My children were abused. My country, I was kicked out of my country, right? There are all of these old, deep wounds. I have a woman I've been doing work with for the last 3-4 years. Huge stories of the land being taken, still showing up in her body. She looks like a, white 50-something so-and-so here, right? Old stories of being a Native person, losing her community, losing the land she loved, carrying that around. How many lifetimes in between that story and this one? I don't know. But, we drag this stuff around. It's time. It's past time. It is well past time to lay these things to rest. And the only way to lay them to rest is in our own hearts and our own minds. The Spirit is right here, willing to take it all, but we have to hand it over.
Yeah, and it seems like the opportunities for that are unlimited at
Mm-hmm.
this point. You can turn on the TV if you have one. I don't have one, but I've got the internet. But you can turn on the TV and watch the news and do your work with the news, because there's probably very few people at this point that can watch the news and not be in some way affected by it in their own minds, right? So you can watch the news and do your work, do your forgiveness work with the news. So yeah, the opportunities are really endless for the kind of healing that we could be doing for ourselves and for the whole, because we do just want that peace of mind, peace in our hearts somewhere. We all do want that. But I love that you're bringing up this idea too, that this kind of work isn't always with people, and it's these ancient stories, but it could also be deceased loved ones and stuff like that. Because when you were talking, I was actually remembering, I think it was when I was with you the last time, and I was taking a taking a walk, and I walked through the cemetery in the area there, and my grandma ended up showing up, and she's been dead for a long time. I think I was 16 when she passed away. There were generally pretty good experiences with her, growing up and being a kid and just going there in the summer and getting fed and having a lovely sort of home to be in with a huge garden. I always loved it. But there were other things about her that really hurt me and my little self at the time. They were really not physically painful, but mentally and to my heart were painful. And when I was taking that walk in the cemetery, she showed up and wanted to just love me up. That's what it felt like. And I said, "Well, hold on a minute. I'm not ready, because I got this and this and this, and I need to tell you that."
Mm.
And I felt like, actually, it was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I understand. I'm sorry." There was it felt like there was an acknowledgement from the other side,
Hmm.
that just wanted to hop in and give me a smooch and some love. And I just couldn't do it unless I said, my grievances and the things that had hurt me. And yeah, it was acknowledged, and then she it sort of felt like, and this is kind of weird for me to talk about because I don't really have experiences like that with deceased ones. But it felt like her big, like, it was like a big sort of face came down and smooshed itself into my face and just gave me all this love once I was finally ready for it, right after I had aired out what was in the way of the connection. So yeah, it's just one of those things, where healing healing goes beyond space and time. And like you said, some of the stuff is really old and it comes from whatever past lifetime on whatever planet and whatever seeming race we found ourselves in. And yeah, some of this stuff is still hanging around, and just use the opportunities to make those amends now. Watch movies and see what comes up. Watch the news and see what comes up. Use it all to, yeah, to atone, to really make everything one again. Bring back all of these parts and heal them. Like it's like these little balls of dough, that just all want to be made into one big ball of dough again. That's kind of silly image that I'm getting with it. You want to make a whole big cookie and not all these little ones.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, there's so much healing happening, and it's right here, right now, and it's on all of our doorsteps. It just is really, are you going to open the door and let the fresh air in? Are you going to clean the cobwebs out of the corners and Windex your glass windows, right, so that the light can stream through? It's time.
Yeah, and it's available, right? And the mind is ready for it. It feels like there's a readiness, there's a certain degree of maturing that's occurred, and the desire is there. So like there's nothing stopping anyone from really going for the healing and going for the truth and going for the light. And everybody can take their place in this world that they're really meant to be taking, on the right side of things, let's say. And yeah, so it's like the spirit is just calling everybody, take your place, take your place. So yeah, I think that may be all we got for today. And yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Our future rolling over all the dividing things. Are you still listening? One